serve our family low. Breakfast, jump shot, dance, fast break.
Welcome, Keys to the Gym fans. Welcome back for week 2. This is Coach. I'm joined here with PG. We're excited to be back with you for another episode. We hope that everybody's had a great week. We're in the final days here, PG, right? Of the summer months. Your sister's already gone back to school.
Oh yeah.
You're still home chilling out. What's the week been like for you? How are you spending your time?
Just getting in the gym a lot. Just getting myself prepared to go back to school. But I'm excited.
So it's going to be freshman year for you, right? Mm-hmm. All right. What is that? What's on the docket? What are the classes that we're excited about getting into?
Well, I'm most excited about AP Gov.
Okay. We were just at the library today, right? You just got a book out. What are we reading? What's next on the reading list?
The Girls of Atomic City.
All right. Well, we'll have to, I guess, roll in a few academic moments here as we make our way through this. But yeah, definitely spending time in the gym. We're excited to have to get into episode 2. And listen, every week we come with you. This is just about a conversation. We just want to have a conversation about topics that are really important to us. Here, as you know, the game of basketball is really important to our family and has been for a while. Had some fun yesterday. You were in the gym helping me out yesterday as we got ready for a fall season with our rising 7th graders. Mm-hmm. Fun to be in there. I was saying to a few folks, like those aha moments, right? And so we're in the gym, we're doing some breakdowns of some different concepts. Trying to teach some 7th graders read and react is not always the easiest thing, no. But I'm proud of our kids. I'm proud that they're making their way forward. But seeing some of our more experienced kids in there who had spent the spring with us, and kind of reintroducing almost after being off for about 4 to 5 weeks, and seeing things click for them, right? And so that's a lot of fun. I think that's really what we should be thinking about as coaches, is to be seeing those aha moments with our players. So you got one more week before we get back to the
one more full week.
One more full week to get back to the full grind. New school for you, right?
Uh-huh.
How's that feel?
New adventure. I'm excited. New adventure.
New adventures are always fun. Just got to have adventures in this life. Keep that mentality, keep that attitude. So, with all that in mind, I wanted to just kick us off here this week. I guess some listeners may see some of this as a rant. I hope it's not. I hope you will hear some of this and take it away as important things to think about. I guess I'll start with just a little bit of a walk down memory lane, and keeping some of the personal stories here in the queue. And so there's 2 that I'll share to get us started. The first is, as we close out this summer, it has me thinking about summers for myself as a kid. I usually included typically 3 things. Fair amount of time in the gym, right? Mm-hmm. With Pops doing summer camps and basketball camps. Usually some time at the town pool, and then plenty of wiffle ball. So those were usually 3 guarantees in the summer months. Of course, there was obviously s'mores and barbecues and all that kind of stuff, but those were the things. And so when I think about it, there's a moment that I have in my mind, and I'm sure it's this one visualization that I have, but it's really a collection of experiences. And it's basketball camp at Union used to be done in big field house, big cavernous building that they used to play in for many, many years. And so camp is in there, and I can recall sitting and listening to a teaching moment during a basketball camp, talking about how to get open, right? How to get open. And V-cut is like the most core element of getting open that most young players should be taught. And of course, the game continues to evolve, and there are many different ways to think about getting open principally. But it wasn't the idea of the V-cut. It was more about the teaching moments, right? And so I can vividly recall this idea and this concept of, to be successful as a player, we have to go where we don't want to go before we go where we want to go. And I remember using that line yesterday at least twice. Mm-hmm. and I don't know if it's me, it could probably be me, or if it's just the fact that young people, they're not all clued in, but, you're hoping that you can just reach a couple of them. And saying that and feeling like, I'm getting blank stares here, I fully understand. And I think it's more than that. I think it's this idea of being willing to delay gratification, right? Am I willing to go where I don't want to go before I can go where I want to go? And I think in basketball, as is in life, this is so principally important. I mean, this is something that Pops and I used to talk about all the time, right? And it was actually his segment that he was going over. And so I think as players and as coaches, even more so than ever, I think it's really critically important to get players to understand this. All the little things matter. One of the things we used to talk about in the spring with this group that we have, we have to do all the small things, all the little things. So if we don't do the small things right, big things aren't going to be done right either.
Yeah.
And I think we as coaches have a responsibility to facilitate learning and growth. Learning how to compete, learning how to win, but it's this concept that I just think is so central to so many things. And in basketball, it can't be any more than that. So this kind of leads me to my next point, right? So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to play at the collegiate level, at the Division III level, small college level, and it was an incredible experience, right? So I think, as players, we go through and we play as young kids, we play as middle schoolers, we play as high schoolers, and if we are presented with and have earned the opportunity to now play at the collegiate level, like home run, right? But that's not why we should do it. But why was it an incredible experience? And so typically you're saying that, people are probably already, the questions are like, oh, you scored 1,000 points, oh, you had this many rebounds, right? You won this many games, you won a championship. Actually, that wasn't my experience, right? Unfortunately, so I joined in my freshman year, a very veteran team, ton of talent, right? And we underachieved my freshman year. Mm-hmm. We did. Unfortunately, I think for whatever reason, and winning is hard, winning's fragile. For whatever reason, the parts just didn't come together. We lost a number of close games, right? Which speaks to the challenge of winning and how you can have all the parts and still come up short. Mm-hmm. Middle of the summer after my freshman year, we have a coaching change. Now there's a bunch of roster turnover. And now this is a program that I went to Hartwick College. It's a program that's a storied program, right? Like, of all the athletics programs at the school, this is the program that has most of the banners, right? And so it's hard, right? There's a lot of feelings about that, and so roster turnover. There were 6 in my class year. I was the only one who ended up playing all 4 years, and sophomore and junior year were on the court really challenging, right? Super challenging. And I think the hardest part we have to be willing to do is, like, I still have to put the work in, right? I still have a responsibility as a part of this program to try to help us put all the parts back together. Mm-hmm. By the time we hit my senior year, right, we now have a young team. We've got some new talent in. Most of the minutes are going to younger players. And so myself and our other senior co-captain, we sort of viewed our responsibility as, how do we lead as players and helping them understand, like, all the things we have to do. And it may not immediately turn into results, right? How do we get to a much more competitive place as a program? How do we get the program back making progress, I can vividly remember, like, athletic facilities, campus is built on a hill, athletic facilities at the top of the hill, and like the number of steps we would have to climb just to get to our 5:30 in the morning workout run right on the football field. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we doing this? And I think at the end of the day, this was about life more than anything else, right? For me, this is the thing I carry forward, is relationships, trust, and a willingness to embrace adversity and push through resilient and have no guarantees that adversity and resilience and willingness that we were putting forward was going to guarantee us anything. Now that freshman class that were there my senior year, they were the group that eventually got the program back into postseason play. And so as I think about that group and think about what's required, like, I think what separates most players is whether they're willing, right? Are they willing to do the things without any guarantees, without there being an outcome, right? Like, if I do all these things, I am 100% going to get to whatever dream I have. But what we miss along the way is like, what's the process teaching me? Like, at some point, the ball's going to stop bouncing, and it did for me, right? It did for me. I was able to achieve something and have an experience, that taught me so much, and I had a full college experience. But it was hard along the way. It was hard along the way. There were some high moments, some important moments. That was all really good. But are we willing to do hard things? And sometimes those little things, like, I'm going to take 1 to 2 steps to my left before I make a basket cut back toward the ball for a scoring opportunity. And am I willing to take 2 steps to my left, now make a basket cut, not get the ball, but as a result of my cutting hard, my teammate is going to have success. And then subsequently, like, our team's going to have success. That's where I think in today's game, like, argue or not argue, the game may be in as good a position as it ever has been. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. There are videos upon videos upon videos of players and kids at all levels, working on their skill. Skill's super important. You and I talk about this all the time. Like, we're in the gym, right? We're working on skill. But we're also trying to teach the importance of how this then translates. And so I kind of wonder, like, is there an optimal level of skill? And then there might be just time spent on skill that eventually comes with diminishing returns. Our game of the week's the Fever versus Mercury. Right? This is one of the Friday night games. We're going to talk about this. When I watched that game, I sort of looked at, what was actually required for Kelsey Mitchell to score, right? What was required for Caitlin Clark to, what did Kalia Copper do? I mean, she had 20-some points. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, we see all these videos of all the kids talking about what they got in their bag. And I just think we do at times miss what's really required to be successful. And I don't know, and I think this is the ultimate thing, and I think it's becoming increasingly so, what ultimately separates most players. And I think so much of it goes back to this idea is, am I willing to do hard things? And sometimes those hard things are the things that, am I willing to go where we don't want to go before we go where I'm willing to go, where I want to go? And so I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that I've been having this week. We're, reflecting on the summer, getting through our summer, getting ready for the fall, thinking about, like, what's really required, right? What is necessary for us? And it's so much more than that, right? As I have said to you before, none of what I just shared with you about my college experience was necessarily like individual accolades, achieving things in the postseason play or in conference that we'd never done. During that time, our biggest task was trying to figure out how, as players and as members of the program, we could, with our coaching staff who took over, find a way to get us back to a place where the program had been. And that's a hard job. Mm-hmm. And not everybody's willing to do the hard job. So anyway, those are some of my rants for the week as we open up, the second episode. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that before I kick it to you and you take us to 2 feet in the paint?
No. I think you explained it perfectly.
Okay. All right, folks. So we talked about episode 1 that Soph was going to lead us through a session every week. Her session is called 2 Feet in the Paint with the PG. And so, PG, it's yours. What do you got for us today?
So I've been giving some thought to what is important to being a great point guard. And one of those things that I believe is required for playing that position is what I call the PG mentality. Now, there are 3 things that I think are that build the PG mentality, and the first part is what I like to call the next play mindset. And so you miss a shot. You can't let that play affect the next one. I was watching an interview, listening to an interview with Caitlin Clark and Brad Ledbetter from What Drives Winning. And he showed her a bunch of clips from her practices with Iowa, and her responses to her missing a shot. She was hanging her head, she was clapping her hands, slapping her thighs, and he said to her that he likes to. He calls that the action between the action, and he said that the action between the action affects your teammates more than your abilities do. And then he asked her, how long does it take you to get a shot off? And she said 1 second. And he said, so you're going to let 1 second affect the rest of the game, 40 minutes. And so I think the next play mindset is just allowing yourself to let go of mistakes. A turnover, keep playing, get back on D, get it back. So the second key part that I think is also very important to the PG mentality is what I like to call touches or taps. It's a high five, a pat on the back, a fist bump, an encouraging word. Steve Nash, one of the best point guards to ever have played in the NBA, averaged 239 touches per game. He was a very unselfish and a very unselfish player, and I think it's very important to be understanding of your teammates, encouraging, unselfish. I think that honestly that's the most important part of being a PG, and also towards the PG mentality. The last piece that I had was usually people like to say there are two types of players who hate to lose or players who love to win. And Kobe actually said that he plays to learn. Playing to learn takes pressure off. It helps while you're watching film. You kind of have a more open mindset. And a different perspective to the game. It also helps you take feedback as feedback, not as criticism. You're more open to feedback, and that's also important to not playing the game afraid. You want to be able to play and just play, not being worried about what's going to happen. You miss a shot. Are you going to the bench? No. You just keep playing. Don't worry about what's going to happen after that play. So those three things really make the PG mentality, which is what I think the most important part of being a point guard.
Do you think that this is stuff that's like, I think sometimes we have a tendency to have this approach to, we learn something, we've learned it, right? We've mastered it. We've picked it up. Or do we think it's more of a process?
I think it's more of a process.
How are you thinking through, and how have you been working through that process?
I've just been trying to keep the mindset as I really struggle watching film of myself, because I'm very critical. I'm very like, oh, I missed that. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And so I've been trying to hold a different perspective of the game.
Talk more.
Like I said about Kobe, playing to learn. So I've been trying to think about the game more as like playing to evolve, playing to grow as a player. So instead of playing to get the end result, you're playing to have fun, playing to grow. And a lot of players, I think, are more focused on the end result. And so that leads them to having the mentality, oh, I missed that. Like, why didn't I do that? So I've been focusing on that a lot as a point guard for myself. But those three things, I think, are really important.
What do you think? I want to pick up a little bit on this playing to learn piece, playing to evolve, playing to grow. And I think part of it is, if I were to challenge, and this is something I kind of wrote down that I wanted to talk about, is like, I worry a little bit, and this isn't an original thought here or anything, it's an observation, it's been something that's been talked about in the game. I don't know. My hunch is it's maybe even a little different for girls and women than it is necessarily for guys. I don't know. I'm certainly open to exploring this further, but when's the last time you played in a pickup game?
Yeah,
Right?
it's been a while.
When's the last time a group text said, "Hey, we're going to the park"? Right.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know why or how. I mean, listen, we could get into a whole host of behavioral and societal changes, but in so many ways, right? In so many ways, access on its merits, on the merits of like, I have a phone, I could pull up clips, or I have a phone, I could text my friends and say, "Hey, let's go get a game of 3-on-3." I worry that there's a piece lost there, right? So I think your point is right. Your points are spot on. But there's not the same, I don't know, approach. There's always another game, right? And so I think part of the playing to learn, the learning piece is critical. And this isn't to suggest like we don't get in the gym, we don't work, we don't develop our skill sets. I think those are all necessities, right? Really separating yourself, those are real necessities. But I think there's a piece to this learning process that our young players in particular don't really know. It hasn't been a part of their childhood. I mean, we've been playing 2-on-2 in our household for a while, and that's probably an entertainment in and of itself. I'm surprised I'm sure our neighbors are happy that our hoop got blown over in the wind because it slowed down some of our games. But that's maybe my challenge, right, to young players. If I'm going to spend all this time talking to my friends, like, why don't I text them and get them to a park? Go play 2-on-2. Make it social. Make it fun. Because that's a piece that I think there's plenty to be gained from those experiences. And it might remind us a little bit more about why we do it, right? I'll step back observationally and watch, when we're with the club or in the gym and see how young people respond. I do wonder how many players that, I'm glad you brought this up. I really am. You just finished your first experience going through all the live recruiting periods, right? And I do step back and watch and wonder. I do see a lot of it, like enjoyment between teammates and friends and relationships being built. So I think there's just so much positive there. That's almost the benefit. I wonder how much of it is really like I'm thrilled, I love being here. Like, man, we just lost. Like, that's a bummer. But then what are we doing when we're back, right? What are we doing? And so I love the 3 points that you made here in PG Mentality. I don't know. What are your thoughts to that? I mean, what do you think about that challenge if I were to say to you, like, go get a game, go make a game, right?
I mean, I think it's really difficult. I honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think it's really difficult to find kids, like even on my team, they're always out doing something, which is great, right? But I think it's really difficult to find just a group of kids who just want to get out and play.
I guess that would be my challenge, right?
Yeah.
To any listeners, anybody who is who's tuning in, is like, if you're in this point in your journey, today is the time, right? There are courts, all over the place. Pay the $3, jump into the Y. Pay the $5, jump into the Y as a guest, right? Find a game, find a ride, find an opportunity, because so much of what you just shared is important. And my guess is, that so much would be gained from some of those informal experiences. And so, all right, any final thoughts on your segment here? Any other things you would leave? I really love each of those. Maybe just give us a quick reminder of all 3 of those points, if you could, for us before we move to the next segment.
Just being able to, next play mindset, Steve Nash touches, make sure you're giving your teammates high fives, being encouraging on the court, off the court as well, and being able to play to learn, play to evolve, play to grow.
Excellent. All right, so as we said to you last week, each week we're going to have a game of the week. WNBA was back. Plenty of games to look at. We let you all decide which one we were going to focus in on and really try to pull it apart a little bit for you all. As we are recording this right now, we got to upgrade our studio here, so we got to get a TV up in here so we can have it on live stream, so we can give you some live tidbits, because I think about 10 minutes ago, the Fever tipped off their second game of the weekend, and there were earlier games. The Wings played on Friday night late. So plenty of W to watch. And you can't do it enough, folks. Right? At some point, there are going to be high school, college games to watch as well, and that will be fun when that gets going. But yeah, so Fever Mercury was the game of the week. Thank you all for who engaged with us during the week to make that selection. All right, PJ, I'm going to let you fire the first shot here. Get us started from the game. Give us one quick observation. Something that really stands out to you.
The Fever just came out punching. They were just on fire. Like the first quarter, the Mercury had no response. They were pushing in transition. I don't know how many shots they missed. They did not.
The Fever played with urgency, didn't they?
Yes.
So it's interesting. What I say to you? I said it's not uncommon. There's some coaches out there who will oftentimes script, like, hey, the first 4 or 5 possessions, this is what we're running. Yeah. Regardless of what a team is doing. Obviously, if a team's, you expect them to play man, they come play zone. I get all that. But they almost had, like, this is what we're doing and we're not deviating from it. Yeah. And I think 4 out of the first 5 possessions, they scored.
Yes.
It was clockwork. And the rhythm in those scoring plays were really critical, and then their energy on the defensive end of the floor was there as well, and allowed the rotations. But you're right. They did come out punching. It's like that old Mike Tyson line: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, I don't know. I don't want to be too hard on the Mercury here and sound too much like a Fever homer, but the Mercury looked a little staggered. Yeah. Now, in fairness,
they did have some players in the Olympics.
They did.
It's a quick turnover. Yeah.
In Paris on a Sunday, back in town, and then they had a back-to-back, right? Mm-hmm. Thursday they were in Chicago, Friday in Indianapolis. So, in fairness, Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner, and Clea Copper had a quick turnaround. Those are 3 really important pieces to their rotation. So, it's not like they hadn't been challenged. But yeah, it was a quick punch. I think you made a great point too about the pace of play, and this is something I want to talk a little bit about. But talk to me about pace. How did pace play into the way that Indiana really affected at least the first quarter?
On a rebound, like on a missed shot, they were looking for the first pitch ahead they could. Same on a made shot. They were getting that ball out of bounds and back in really quickly. Caitlin Clark, obviously, with the ball in her hands, but she also took it herself. She ran the floor really, really quickly. Honestly, I don't think the Mercury picked up the ball very well.
Yeah, their point
to start off, yes,
wasn't great. Your point about on both makes and misses. There weren't very many makes early for Phoenix. Yeah. Unfortunately, and I want to talk about that in a second. But you're right. The interesting thing, and there are a couple of players that over the years have really, Caitlin Clark is the most recent example of this, but there's another name I'm going to throw out to you who does an incredible job advancing the ball with the pass. And I saw a statistic this morning. Everything is branded, right? Everything's up for sale. And so Microsoft Copilot, they were the data provider to tell you that the average, pass that Caitlin Clark makes up the floor is 50 feet, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy. It's more than a pitch ahead. It's like a get ahead pass, right? Sue Bird was tremendous as well at delivering what I would say is our transition scoring passes.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between just pitching it ahead and actually making a scoring pass. And what Caitlin Clark did a terrific job of, and what she's always done a terrific job of, and again, Sue Bird was tremendous in this way as well. They really, one have great vision, but they were only gonna really make those pitch ahead, get ahead passes when it was clear there were scoring opportunities, because their secondary read was gonna be to keep it. And we saw in this game something we don't often see, and maybe this is a development thing for Caitlin Clark, but her carrying it deeper and further up the floor and attracting attention to create scoring opportunities either for herself or for others. And so just a tremendous job in their ability to advance the ball, as you said, both on makes and misses early. I believe it was like 22-9 or something.
Yeah.
With about, I want to say maybe a couple minutes toward the end of the first quarter. That was about when they sat Caitlin Clark for the first time. The other observation, I'm curious to get your perspective on this. Interestingly enough, I thought Indiana had some mismatch opportunities, and one in particular was Kelsey Mitchell.
Yeah.
Sophie Cunningham, who's a terrific shooter. Really, she was matched up on Mitchell early. There was even a play where Mitchell had her beat baseline and like stopped and reversed it. And I remember us both saying, "Where is she going?
Yeah.
Like that's a layup, right? At a minimum, she would have drawn the help defense and been able to drop it off to, they were putting Melissa Smith in like the dunker spot area. But a terrific job, but had a mismatch and they were able to go at that early. But what did you think about some of the matchups defensively? Matchups Mercury versus the Fever, especially early.
I think that obviously Brittany Griner at the big spot, Boston. I mean, that's a tough matchup for Aaliyah Boston. I thought she did pretty well in there. Got a couple kickouts. I don't remember who was guarding Kalia Copper.
So Lexi Hall was actually the primary later in the game.
Yeah, but at the beginning, I don't remember.
I can't recall exactly who had that matchup.
Whoever it was, she went she was 4 for 4 from the free throw line. She had 9 points in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, not much changed.
No.
Lexi Hall did a really nice job late in the game.
Yeah.
I say nice job. In fairness, Kalia Copper is an all-W player. Obviously, Ellie thinks the same. Right? She voices her opinion here. Ellie's our dog, folks, for those of you who are tuning in. She's pretty vocal. Probably the most vocal one in the house. She agrees. Kalia Copper's just a tough guard. Now, I thought Hall was aggressive and made her work. Now, maybe if she would have made her work earlier, that would have been different. But Copper got going early and is the key to that team, I think, at this point. That's no disrespect to Brittany Griner or Diana Taurasi. It's just the reality of, the roles that they're playing on this team. Now, I did think it was interesting. Here you've got Brittany Griner, who's all-W player, right? One of the best post players ever to play the game, 6'9". Mm-hmm. They really didn't go to her early. And they made a run late in the game, the Mercury did. And I thought their paint touches, post touches helped to trigger that, because early, so much of what the Mercury were doing were one pass and then an ISO, or one pass and a quick shot. And when our shot isn't falling, what do we always talk about? We gotta really then focus on like everybody touching it, get everybody a touch, get that ball moving, right? Now when it's going good, right?
Yeah.
When the ball's rolling downhill, like we can let it fly. But they really were grinding and struggling. Indiana did a nice job of doubling from the weak side or the baseline side on Griner early. She was able to respond to that in the second half. But just as much as it was sort of a tale of two things, right? Indiana was in rhythm, and that really keyed their defense and keyed their urgency. And then Mercury had no rhythm. It was they couldn't be polar opposites. I think the game got to 31 points at one point in the first half.
Yes.
Now, if anybody watched the game they played right before the Olympic break, tell me what happened. So,
The Mercury came back from, what was it, a 28 point lead. I mean, I think it was pretty much the exact same thing that happened.
It was almost exactly the same thing. A credit to Indiana that they were able to respond. Again, fairly young among the players who are getting the majority of minutes. Fairly young roster, right? But yeah, I mean, really a nice response. Let's talk about the second half, right? Open up, and man, the Fever played in the third quarter like a young team, right? Like they got a little, we talk about, like, sometimes, like, I played a little happy, right? We're good. We still got a 17-point lead. We play a little happy. Shots are getting a little quicker. I
think.
Yeah, talk to me. What do you say?
The Mercury went on a 26-7 run in the third quarter. I mean, but then I remember the Fever, Chrissy Sides called a timeout, right? They come out, beautiful ATO execution.
Their end of the floor,
oh
right?
my gosh. Yes, it was beautiful. I mean, coming out of that, I mean, it was 26-7 run. Fever looked a little tired at that point because they'd been running a lot. I mean, they come out. What was it exactly that they, like, who was it? Mitchell? I think it was Mitchell. What was she coming off? Was it like a down screen?
She came off of a down screen and buried a three.
Yeah.
The Mercury end up take a lead though.
Yeah, they do.
They take a 1-point lead, and then Lexi Hall makes a huge three to put them back up, and they got back up 2, and that really was the last time that the Fever sort of regained some of that early rhythm. Mm-hmm. But it gets to the point of there were 2 moments I recall in this game where the Fever leveraged timeouts, out of timeout situations to get themselves sort of almost what I would say is like reorganized offensively, right? Those moments where teams and Coach Sides understanding her group and the magnitude of the game, there was some, we're going to touch on this in a second, there was a little excitement and emotion displayed by the players a couple times, but use those like textbook. Like, this is the shot we want, this is the shot we're going to get. And it speaks to the importance of balance in how we play the game. I think you really need to be able to, you got it for a group that's really mature and can be successful. I think you've got to have a group that understands in the flow of play, right? Players make plays, plays don't make players. Mm-hmm. In the flow of game, as we're playing, like where we need touches, what kind of shots we want, when players have it going, who then needs to get that next shot. Pops used to always say this, we just came up again the other day. Hopefully he'll be a future guest for us, so this will be fun. But he used to talk about on his best teams, right? They always understood who needed to get what shots and when on their best teams. The Fever assisted on 66% of their made field goals, right? They didn't turn it over a ton. They had, I think, twice as many points in the paint as the Mercury. And they just seem to be able to either understand who needs what shot at what time, or when it was time to, like, coach wants us running this, they ran it and they executed it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you execute and you miss, but to be able to do that, I think shows a team that has a lot of potential. But the most successful teams, they just sort of understand who needs what shot and when, how to get that shot, and then also respect enough when they need the direction, right, from their coaching staff on what they're seeing and what we need to get, right? It doesn't always mean you're going to be perfect, but I just thought that was a good reminder and a good moment in the game. I mean, Diana Taurasi hit some big shots for them. Yes. Big shots. I mean, if anybody thinks that she's still not impacting the game at this stage of her career, like, it's an inspiration. Kudos to her. But yeah, their ATOs, as you brought up, came at really critical times, and they executed. They executed. What else? Any other final thoughts from you on the game as it relates to what you saw?
I mean, what happened on that double tech?
Yeah. So, Mitchell was coming off an Iverson cut, right?
Wasn't it like wasn't it like a back screen?
Well,
wasn't it like
she was coming off when you have players in both high posts, and you run a player off that to enter the ball. We call that like an Iverson cut.
Okay.
For those of you who are a little younger and don't know Allen Iverson, he was arguably one of the greatest scorers. And I hate even to say like at his size, given he wasn't a very big player, but Philadelphia used to run an action that ran him off sort of a double high post to get him the ball going in a downhill direction because he was pretty shifty, but he could also elevate up over people and could make mid-range jump shots, which seems to be a lost art in today's game.
Yeah.
But anyway, they ran her off of double high post or an Iverson cut, and Natasha Cloud, who is a very physical defender, very tough-minded point guard, she chased what I would refer to as nose in the back, right?
Yeah.
She's not, Mitchell's not coming off this and touching the basketball. And kind of I think she had a little hold or grab. It was hard to tell from the camera angle. Clearly Mitchell was not excited about Cloud's physicality. It did look like she almost kind of fell as a result of the pressure and physicality that Cloud had on her coming off. Kind of tumbles a little bit, turns around, kind of like shoves her back, and then we end up with some pushing and shoving, a little scuffle between players. So I thought interesting to see. I think the Mercury ended up with three technicals in the game versus one for Indiana. There was at least one more that came later, I think. Taurasi might have gotten one.
But didn't Brittany Griner also get one? Was that the arm, or was that just a personal foul?
I think that was just a personal foul. Brittany Griner got a technical foul for something she said right after that call.
Oh, yeah.
When she was going to the bench, or she was already on the bench, which became a non-floor technical. Listen, the game of basketball is emotional. It's tough, right? And I think it's important for our players to understand. Important for players to understand how to manage that, right? There are times where that emotion can really get your group going, get your team going, and rally. Other times, if it's not going well, right, it comes out at the wrong time. It can kind of take you in the other direction.
I mean, you mentioned wrong time. That double tech hit, and the Fever they were kind of on a run at that point. And it kind of just like slowed everything down. I mean, I think that's kind of what pushed Mercury to come back a lot. So that double tech did slow down the game a lot.
It can change the game, right? Especially at that level, right? It's a professional level. Now they're going to the monitor, right?
Yeah.
3 or 4 minutes later, we finally have a disposition from the officials, right? A ruling from the officials on what's going to happen. But you're 100% right. I mean, you got to be able to manage. You got to be able to manage that, right? And it's hard. It's hard, and there are rivalries set up here and whatnot. And so, I mean, this is something that it's hard to manage, right? To be able to be, I think, truly great, you got to be able to understand time and place, time and score. Right? Talk about at what points in the game can we afford to allow this, and some of the best kind of let that fire just kind of burn right underneath the surface. And so, but no, great point. Absolute great point. Fever ended up pulling out the win. Right? I think it ended up being 9 at the end. So another win, and they sort of come back from the break, playing at the level they really played at the last few weeks, picking up a bunch of wins and keeping themselves squarely in playoff contention as a young team. Surpassed are close to surpassing their wins from last year. But there's no easy days.
No.
There's no easy days. And the Mercury are also fairly squarely in the playoff hunt and obviously have a ton of experience. I think the most important player for them at this moment in time is probably Clea Copper.
Yeah.
She is she impacts winning. She impacts the game. She's a bucket for them. And then for the Fever, continuing for their younger players to define their roles and understanding. I think for them, their biggest challenge is going to be, can we defend consistently at a playoff level to be able to make a run? So a great game. We'll go ahead and talk about, put out another poll for next week's game. Should be a lot of great matchups. I think one game to circle on your calendars. The Fever will be at the Sky on August 30th, so in about a week and a half. Talk about rivalries. That's one that we can't afford to miss. But we're in that last 13, 14 game stretch, push to the playoffs in a 40 game schedule, 40 game schedule, and there's going to be a lot of exciting days ahead. The Liberty rolled to another win. I say rolled. I think the score at the end appeared a little bit further away against the Aces, but the Liberty are going to be a tough matchup. Connecticut Sun got another W with their new addition, Marina Mabry, who came over from the Sky trade.
Yeah.
So lots of dynamic times in the W as we wrap up the season before we head into the fall. But any other thoughts as we get into just our final wrap-up?
No, I'm just excited to see some more WNBA games, ready for the playoffs, and I'm just excited.
All right, folks, listen, last two points, right? I put one question out to the listeners to drop your player development questions to us. We had a couple come in that were focused on ball handling. Listen, 10 minutes every day, 10, 15, 20 minutes every day. We'll post some examples, some sequences onto our Instagram, both story and post, of some great drills that we've used, I use with the kids that I work with, as well as Soph does on her time. And it's all about repetition. But then once you rep them out and you're building some of that confidence and strength, you got to go play. You got to put it into use. And don't focus on how many tricks you can put in your bag, because as we talked about earlier, it's not required to be an effective player, right? You got to be able to handle the ball. But when you watch professionals today, those at the highest level, the game is not played with 80 things in your bag, right? It's played very soundly, very fundamentally, and you got to have all the skills. And then this is the challenge for the week. Challenge for the week is start a trend. Start a trend. Get a game. I'm going to put out a poll, and we're going to challenge this trend over the next, many weeks. Go get yourself a pickup game. Call some friends, text some friends, find a court, get a group together, and go work on your games. Any final thoughts, PG?
Nope.
All right, folks. Hey, it's been great having you with us. Go lace them up and get it done. We'll talk to you next week.
We've lived and breathed this treasured sport. Through ups and downs, wins and defeats, our family bond remains complete. Keys to the gym, unlocking our hearts. 3 generations, tearing courts apart. More than a game, it's in our blood. Keys to the gym, our family's love. Our family's love. And trophies gleaming on the shelf, each one a story in itself. But true wealth's not in cups of gold, it's in the memories we hold. Keys to the gym, unlocking our hearts. 3 generations, tearing courts apart.